Okay, we are in the middle of Torah Yud Bet, Tehillah le David. And we are in the middle of explaining, Rebbe Nachman is explaining here about what happens when a person, when the tzaddik from below, the lower tzaddik, the tzaddik in this world, is learning the Torah of the tzaddik from above, the tzaddik in the higher world, the tzaddik that was actually mechadish, that actually taught this Torah that we're learning. What happens is that you are combining the Torah of the tzaddik, which is the neshama of the tzaddik, it's the chiyus of the tzaddik, with your life energy, which is expressed through your power of speech. And the tzaddik as well, when he was mechadish the Torah, when he taught this Torah, he was combining his life energy, his ability to speak, with its source, with the Malchus, with the Torah. And so on both ends, you have the tzaddik that has that connection with the Torah from his end, when he was mechadish the chidush, when he was mechadish this Torah. And in that chidush, you have the chiyus of the tzaddik, you have the energy of the tzaddik, you have the life energy of the tzaddik, which is his ability to speak. And here, when I'm learning it, I'm doing the same thing. And through this connection, through this combination that I'm combining my life energy with my ability to speak, and I'm speaking the words of the tzaddik, there is this connection that's happening between me and the tzaddik. And this connection is a connection of ruach, rucha berucha, as the Zohar calls it. One ruach with the other ruach. And that's called the zivug de neshikin. It's a unification and the level of kissing, which is a unification of mochin, a unification and the level of the gar, the gimel rishonot, the first three sfirot. And when you're doing this, so it's as if you're kissing the tzaddik, because when a person is kissing, there is a combination, a unification that's happening between the ruach, the two breaths, the two people that are kissing. And so, since here, this unification, this connection is happening between my ruach and the ruach of the tzaddik, so it's as if I'm kissing the tzaddik, and as if the tzaddik is kissing me. And so, when that happens by a shade Yehudi, if the Jewish demon, the shade Yehudi, the person who's learning Torah, not with the wrong intentions, with destructive intentions, with intentions of his whole purpose is for the fulfillment of his own ego, his ego drive, his ego desire, then such a person is considered in the Gemara worse than a dead carcass, worse than a dead animal. And definitely the tzaddik doesn't want to be kissing a dead animal. And here it's worse than a dead animal, the body of a dead animal. And so the tzaddik definitely doesn't want to be kissing him. It's terrible for the tzaddik to have this person learning his Torah and causing him to kiss, this connection between the breath of the tzaddik and the breath of this person who's learning his Torah. So says Rebbe Nachman, והרוח ממללה הוא הנפש חיה. This is the aspect of the connecting the one spirit with the other spirit, one speaking spirit with the other speaking spirit. This halacha that you're learning, the words of the Tana, the words of the Amora, the words of the Shulchan Aruch, the chidushim of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the chidushim of the Baal Shem Tov, the chidushim of Rabbi Nachman, what that is the dibur of the tzaddik. It's his dibur, it's his speech, and in his speech is his chiyus. His life energy is within that speech. Infused within that speech is his life energy. As it says, living soul, Hashem breathed within man. The breath of Hashem made man into a living soul. And Targum of that is, the definition of that is a speaking spirit. The fact that now he's able to speak comes from the fact that he is a living soul. And the fact that he is a living soul is expressed by his ability to speak. So the speech of a person is infused with the life energy of that person. And the speech of the tzaddik, that tzaddik spoke these insights, these chidushim, this Torah is infused with the life energy of that tzaddik. והרוח ממעלה הוא הנפש חיה. היא באה מתורה שבעל פה, כמו שכתוב, תוצא הארץ נפש חיה. The ruach ממעלה, the ability to speak, that itself is the nefesh chaya. That itself is the living soul that is expressed through speech. Where does it come from? When Hashem breathed within man, we had, I think it was Torah Dalit in Likutei Moharan, that the source of this breath that Hashem breathed within man, the nefesh chaya, to make him the nefesh chaya, to make him a living soul. Where does that come from? That comes from the Torah. Like it says, "V'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim." Ruach Elohim, that's the breath of Hashem that Hashem breathed within man. Vayipach be'apav nishmat chayim. The chayim is this ruach Elohim. That's the life, and that's the Torah. The Zohar says, what does it mean? V'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. The spirit of Hashem is dwelling upon the water, floating upon the water. The Zohar says, what's the water? The water is always representing the Torah. So this breath of Hashem is the Torah. It's drawn from the Torah, and that's the Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life. That's where life is drawn. That's where the breath is drawn from, the Ruach is drawn from. This spirit of life is drawn from the Torah and brought within the man. And that makes him a living soul. Mosh כתוב, תוצא הארץ נפש חיה, נמצא בשעה שמחדש התנא איזה חידוש. ומדבר זה החידוש, זה הדיבור בעצמו, היא בחינת התורה שבעל פה שחידש. כי משם מוצאה, כמו שכתוב, תוצא הארץ נפש חיה. When this Tana is originating these words of Torah, these insights in Torah, so these insights that he is teaching is itself the Torah, right? That's what he's speaking. He's speaking Torah. So now the dibur of this Tana, and the dibur, the words, the speech of this Tana, which is itself the expression of his life energy, is connected with the source of that life energy, which is the Torah, because it is speaking Torah. כי משם מוצאה, כמו שכתוב, תוצא הארץ נפש חיה. נמצא עכשיו כשלומדים את החידוש הזה, או כשמכניסים הלימוד והחידוש בתוך הפה, נמצא שמדבקים רוח הצדיק שחידש, זה החידוש, עם רוח ממעלה להיינו, עם הדיבור הלומד, זה החידוש עכשיו, וזאת ההידבקות רוחה ברוחה נקרא נשיקים. And so you are taking the words of Torah, which is infused with the life energy of the tzaddik, and you're speaking it from your own mouth, and by doing so, you are connecting, you are reviving that life energy of the tzaddik with your own life energy. And you are combining your life energy with the life energy of the tzaddik. And that's the zivug and the shikin that we spoke about. That's the kissing that is happening. וזאת ההידבקות רוחה ברוחה נקרא נשיקים. נמצא כשלומדים איזה הלכה שחידשו התנאים, על ידי זה נדבק רוח התנא עם רוח הלומד, ודומה כאילו נושק את עצמו עם התנא. אבל תלמיד חכם של יהודי כשלומד גמרא או פסק דין, עליו כתוב נאה טהרות נשיקות שונא. When this Jewish demon is learning Torah, the Shed Yehudi, when he's learning halacha, when he's learning Gemara, about him it is said in Mishlei, the pasuk in Mishlei says about such a person that the kisses of the enemy are hated. They are disgusting. Okay, the kisses of an enemy are hated. Because the Tana, the tzaddik from above, he is not able, he hates, and he can't even have on any, even for a moment, the kiss of this tzaddik, of this Rasha. He cannot even tolerate it for a moment, the kiss of this Shed Yehudi, of this Jewish demon. Because who is able to kiss a carcass, and especially here that we're speaking about someone that in the Torah is considered worse than a carcass, less than a carcass. So definitely the tzaddik from above cannot tolerate even the smallest kiss from such a person. ואפילו צדיקים שכבר הלכו לעולמם, וכשאנו לומדים תורותיהן, על ידי זה נדבק רוחם ברוחנו, כמו שאמרו חכמינו זיכרונם לברכה, שפתותיהם דובבות בקבר, וזה על ידי בחינת נשיקה. And now Rabbi Nachman is introducing something that we see in the Gemara. The Gemara says that when you learn the Torah of a tzaddik, so the lips of that tzaddik are speaking those words in their grave. So you are bringing life into the mouth of that tzaddik when you're speaking in the Torah that he taught, that he originated in his name. When you're speaking it in his name, you're causing life energy to be brought into the mouth of the tzaddik in his grave, and to his lips are revived, and they also are speaking those words as you are speaking them. And that's why the Gemara says, Siftutehem dovevot bakever. The Gemara says about them that their lips are moving in their grave. And how does that happen? What is the mechanism that makes that work? That happens through this, what we call neshikin, the kissing. Because through the neshikin, through the kissing, you are combining your ruach chayim with the ruach of the tzaddik. You're combining your life energy with the speech of the tzaddik. And this is, now Rebbe Nachman is going to take this Torah and he's going to explain that this is what we see in Bereshit when Yaakov kissed Rachel. Okay, this is the aspect, this is what's going on when Yaakov kissed Rachel. What was that kissing Rachel all about? It says in the pasuk that Yaakov kissed Rachel, and then he raised his voice and he wept out loud. Well, he wept out loud when he kissed Rachel. Rashi said, why? Why did Yaakov weep? Why did he cry out loud when he kissed Rachel? Rashi says, "Shetzafa pirush Rashi shetzafa beruach kodesh she'ena nechneset imo likvura." Yaakov saw with ruach hakodesh that Rachel was not to be buried with him in the same grave. Right? Yaakov was buried in Me'arat HaMachpelah, and Rachel was buried in Kever Rachel. Yeah, Rachel was buried Baderech Ephrata, right outside of Yerushalayim. And so he saw that she would not be buried with him, and that's why he wept out loud. But what does this mean? So what is this referring to? What is it representing? So we see the Neshikin that we spoke about. But what is it? How is this Torah represented in this pasuk, in this Rashi? Rachel b'chimat Torah shebe'al peh shehi ki Rachel lifnei gozezea she'akol gozezin ufuskin mimena halachot. Rachel represents the oral Torah, the Torah shebe'al peh. Why is the Torah shebe'al peh called Rachel? So according to Kabbalah, the Zohar explains that the written Torah represents Yaakov, which is the male aspect, whereas the Shechina, the female aspect, which is called Rachel, represents the oral Torah. But Rabbi Nachman explains it in the name itself of Rachel. What does the name Rachel mean? Rachel is a lamb. The word Rachel is a lamb. And the lamb, what do we use the lamb for? The lamb is where we get wool from. And so the lamb is farmed and kept and raised and taken care of in order to have the wool cut off, sheared from her, right? And so there is this expression, like a lamb before her shearers. There's a pasuk in Yeshayahu. Sorry, it's an expression. Okay, like a lamb before her shearers. Oh, it is a pasuk in Yeshayahu. It's in Yeshayahu Nun Gimel. And so this is what the Torah of the oral Torah is about. The oral Torah is also like a lamb, and everyone is extracting the shears from her through which they may cover themselves. And covering oneself is the aspect of kavod. It's an aspect of honor, of respect, of glory, like the Gemara says. Rabbi Yochanan called his clothing that which is mechabed him, that which glorifies him, that which honors him. The clothing of a person is that's the covering, the surrounding the person, which honors that person. And so the clothing which is taken from the Torah Shebaal Peh is used to cover oneself, and that means on a deeper level, that means that everyone is taking these shears, from the Torah Shebaal Peh. They're taking the wool, they're taking the clothing from the Torah Shebaal Peh, and they're covering themselves. It means that they are causing their soul to be enclothed with honor, with holy respect. And that's really what the soul is seeking, because the soul of a person is taking from the Kisei HaKavod. The soul of a person is taking from the throne of Hashem's glory, of Hashem's honor. That's the source of a person's soul. And that soul is always seeking to be reunited with its source. And that's the Kavod of Hashem. And so when everyone is taking off these shears, this wool, this clothing that they are making from the Torah Shebaal Peh, okay, what does that mean? That means that when you have the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral Torah, really what is happening is that you are taking this light of the Torah and you are applying it to yourself in different situations. That's the difference between the oral Torah and the written Torah. The written Torah is the source, and then when you take from the Torah the light into this world and apply it to every aspect of your life, that's called the oral Torah. When you take from that light of the Torah at its source and you embody it, and you completely fill your consciousness with it to a point where it shows you how to act based upon that, how to act in this physical world, that's the oral Torah. That's the Chidushim of Torah Shebaal Peh. And that's what happens when you ingest the written Torah, you ingest the light of the Torah within yourself, and that produces fruits. That produces fruits. Those fruits are what they represent is your ability to apply the words of the Torah in this world, in every aspect of your life. And that's what it means. That's like a Rachel. That's like a lamb that everyone, like the pasuk says, that a lamb before her shearers, that everyone is coming and they're taking off these the wool. They're making wool from the shearing of the lamb that they are extracting, and from that they are making garments to enclothe their soul with. And that's the light of the Torah that is enclothing the soul in this world and glorifying the soul, and then in the next world as well. Right? As much as a person does this in this world, that's how much a person will merit in the next world also to have this special garment of of holy honor surrounding his soul. And that's why many times when you have people, relatives of someone who passed away, dreaming of that relative that passed away coming to them dressed in very beautiful, very nice white clothing, that's a good sign about that soul. And the Zohar speaks about the importance of the clothing of the soul of a person, the clothing of the neshama that a person will merit in the next world based on the way they lived in this world. And so that is taken from the Torah. That is achieved and merited through the Torah. And especially Rebbe Nachman is saying here, the oral Torah, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, when you take the Torah, the light of the Torah, and you surround every aspect of your soul, the thoughts that you're thinking, the words that you're speaking, and the actions that you are taking, is all surrounded and all enclosed within the light of the Torah by applying the light of the Torah to your thoughts and to your speech and to your actions. In this way, you have merited the holy garments of the Torah, of the Kabbalah of the Torah in your life. And so everyone is extracting, cutting off, shearings from this lamb. And what is that? What is it that they are taking from this lamb, from this oral Torah? They are taking the halachot, and they're learning from the Torah. They're learning how to apply the Torah in all these different circumstances and all these different situations, which is the basis of what halacha is all about. And that becomes their clothing, as it says in the pasuk in Mishlei, kivasim lilvushecha. Kivasim lilvushecha means that the sheep will provide your garments. Kivasim lilvushecha, the sheep for your garments. Kivasim is the sheep, which is the rachel, and lilvushecha, they will provide you with garments. Kemosh katuv simla lecha katzin tiyeh lanu. And also, as it says in the pasuk, that you have garments, simla lecha katzin, you have garments, simla lecha, you have garments, katzin tiyeh lanu. And because you have garments, you will be our leader. Very interesting pasuk. It's a pasuk in Yeshayahu Gimel, the 3rd chapter in Yeshayahu. Simla lecha, you have garments, katzin tiyeh lanu. You will be our leader. So how does that connected to the garments, being a leader? כשאדם כשר לומד תורת התנא, אזי התנא נושק אותו, והוא נושק התנא, וגורם תענוג גדול להתנא, כמו שכתוב, שפתותיו דבבות בקבר. So when a person has taken from the light of the Torah and applied it in every aspect of his life, so as we said, he is created for himself, he has merited for himself these garments of the holy honor of Hashem. And that in itself is what gives him the light of the kingship of Hashem. It's called Malchut. And that's why the Torah is called, the Torah, it says about the Torah, the pasuk says, Bi melachim yimlochu, through me kings will rule. Okay, and that's why Man Malchi Rabbanan, the Gemara says. Who are kings? The Rabbanim, the Chachamim, the Talmidei Chachamim, those that learn Torah, those that know Torah, and those that apply Torah are kings. And where do they receive that kingship? They receive it from the oral Torah, when they have surrounded themselves and enclosed their soul with these garments of the holy Torah, of the oral Torah, by applying it through the halachot in every aspect of their life. They have merited the kavod. Because kavod is all connected to kingship, to malchut. Malchut, like we say, Shem kevod malchuto, right? So kavod is malchut. It's the honor of Hashem, and that's the king. The king is all about the honor. The king is made a king through the honor that we give him. That's how his kingship is measured. And through the Torah Sheba'al Peh that you have surrounded yourself with, you merit these halachot, you merit this kingship, You merit this malchut, and because of that, the pasuk says, "Simna lecha katzin tieh lanu." Through these garments that you have, you will be our leader. A leader is a king on a level. It's an aspect of king. Every leader is an aspect of malchut. And so through the garments of the Torah, you have this aspect of malchut. But when a person takes the malchut for themselves, when a person wants to rule by themselves in a way which is separated from the Ribbon Shalom, a way which is disconnected from Hashem, and wants to take the kingship of Hashem all for his own pleasure, that is the definition of the Jewish demon. That's the definition of the Shade Yehudi. As we said yesterday, the shade, the letters of Shin Daled Yud, when it's missing the Yud, then it's all about taking the Malchus for himself. And that's when a person learns Torah with the wrong intentions. What was the definition? How did Rebbe Nachman explain the Shade Yehudi? Shade Yehudi is someone who's learning the Torah in order that he should be called a rabbi, in order that he should be given honor. So he's seeking a malchut, he's seeking to be a leader, he's seeking to be to have kingship, an aspect of malchut, for his own pleasure, for the fulfillment of his own desires. And that's why he's called a shade. That's why he's called a demon. And so that's the opposite of what we're speaking here, right? That's the other end. The Talmid Chacham on the side of holiness, the holy Talmid Chacham, which is the aspect of Shin Daled Yud with the Yud at the end, right? The Yud is representing Hashem, so he has connected the Malchut to rule the aspect of kingship to the Yud, to the name of Hashem. So such a Talmid Chacham, the holy Talmid Chacham, he is included in the honor of Hashem. And on the other hand, when we're speaking about the demon, that he takes the malchut for himself instead of attributing the kingship to Hashem. כשאדם קושר לו מתורת התנא, אזי התנא נושק אותו והוא נושק התנא וגורם תענוג גדול להתנא, כמו שכתוב שפתותיו דובבות בקבר. So on the one hand, you have the demon that the Tana doesn't tolerate, the tzaddik from above cannot tolerate even the smallest kiss of that demon, because that demon is considered worse than a carcass. And Tana cannot tolerate him learning the Torah of the Tana, because when he's learning the Torah of the tzaddik from above, then he is kissing the tzaddik from above, and the tzaddik can't tolerate it. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, the side of holiness, you have the Talmid Chacham is learning with the right intentions. He's learning Torah Lishma. He's the aspect of Yaakov as opposed to Lavan. He's the aspect of Yaakov. And when he learns Torah, and he's learning the Torah of the tzaddik from above, and he is infusing his life energy, his power of speech, in the speech of the tzaddik, and there's a combination, a unification that's happening between his speech, his ruach, his power of life, his power of speech, his life energy with the life energy of the Tana. Like that, he is causing, not only is he causing tremendous pleasure to the Tana, but he's also causing the lips of that tzaddik from above, he's causing his lips to move and to speak those words and to be brought back to life, to be revived with that life energy, even though they are in the grave now, but they are now infused with that life energy from this tzaddik from below in this world who's learning his Torah, and that brings a tremendous pleasure to that tzaddik. And that's we'll see more about this tomorrow, B'ezras Hashem.